G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here, and it's 7:10 on the 8th of January. This is a malt liquor video, Sierra Nevada, Northern Hemisphere harvest, and this requires a tool to open it. This is some of the most politically incorrect beer that I've ever drunk. This stuff is, it's wet hop brewed, and because they've only got one harvest per year in the Northern Hemisphere, the people at this brewery air freight fresh cut wet hops from West Australia to California. So it goes into the brew kettle within 24 hours. They then make very lovely beer out of it, ship it back probably on a boat to Western Australia, where it then gets put on a train and it crosses the Null Arbor Plain. Null Arbor as Latin for no trees. People think it sounds Aborigine, Nullarbor Plain. Yeah, I had a lot of Aborigines speaking Latin. So, $12 a bottle, but very superior booze, 6.7% alcohol, 3.8 standard drinks. Isn't it a pity that its price does not reflect the atmospheric carbon gas emissions of putting it here in my hand? There are people who don't like thinking about atmospheric carbon emissions. There are people who think that either the globe is not warming, or if it is warming, it's warming for some reason that has nothing to do with human activity. These people used to call themselves skeptics, but they've sort of worn out their welcome in the club of the skeptics. People who apply critical skepticism to ideas. People who test and examine hypotheses and theories to see if they're going to hold water. I mean, if somebody says plaster of Paris is cheaper than cement, why don't we use plaster of Paris to build a bridge? It'll be cheaper. The credulous might think that's a good argument. The critical skeptic might say, well, yeah, trouble with that idea is that plaster of Paris washes away in water. The scientists have explained that the planet is warming because we're pumping carbon dioxide out. The people who don't want to disturb the steady growth of the economy don't want to hear that emitting carbon dioxide is imperiling the biosphere of planet Earth. They don't want to hear that burning coal and oil and gas is actually changing the way the chemistry of the atmosphere works, so the planet is getting warmer, so things are going to change, the weather's going to become more extreme, and not only is the weather becoming more extreme, so the hottest days are hotter than they used to be, but the way we've managed the landscape means that the landscape is less able to tolerate a string of hot days with high winds. So we have progressed our way into an industrial corner where we have a huge population utterly dependent on an oil-fired food production system. I wonder if the production of this bottle of beer cost an equal weight of petroleum to the weight of the beer bottle when I bought it. The people who are most resistant to accepting climate science, the fact that the globe is warming, are the people who have the most emotionally and financially and physically invested in the belief that it is morally and ethically, humanely acceptable to look for a job so that you can earn the money to pay your rent after having paid your tax, after having paid your superannuation contribution, so that you can buy your food, pay your insurance, buy your clothes, save up and have enough money to go away on holiday. And if you keep your nose to the grindstone and you work hard at something, it doesn't matter what the something is as long as it's technically legal. So if there's no laws against it, but it hurts somebody, that's okay. So you can run a gambling industry. You can sell alcohol to alcoholics. But the idea is that roughly between when you're 20 and when you're 65, you're supposed to work to grow the economy, to make the gross national product and the gross domestic product increase. And if you do that, and if you obey all the minor and major rules of the society, then the theory is that when you get to be 60 or 65, you should be able to retire and live on half your working wages until you die of old age, which these days is 85, 90. And the only way it's possible for that to happen is if the money that's invested in superannuation funds now continues to earn between 5 and 15% per annum. So the economy has to grow. And because the economy has to have an environmental surplus to exploit in order to function, let alone grow, and there's now no longer any environmental surplus because 5,000 years of industrial agriculture have consumed the environmental surplus. Because of those factors, plus peak oil, peak coal, peak phosphorus, peak fish, we're in a situation where the economy is shrinking. It's been shrinking since 2008. The United States is in debt to the point where its laws forbid it from borrowing anymore past March. China has been lending money to America so that America could afford to buy China's manufactured goodies. Europe can't afford to borrow the money to pay the interest on the money they've already borrowed. Essentially, the parents and grandparents of my generation and my generation as well, we have borrowed and spent the entire lifetime's working capacity of my generation and my children's generation and probably their children's generation as well. But these are unpleasant, inconvenient, factual truths to the mind of somebody who's living in a town or a city, struggling to pay the mortgage and planning next year's holiday. They don't want to know about the facts of global warming. They don't want to know that whereas 30 years ago golf balls sized hailstones were considered unusual, whereas now cricket ball sized hailstones are, well, it's It makes the news when it happens, but it's not the first time anybody's heard of it. They don't want to know that the reason the hailstones have grown from golf balls to cricket balls is because the thermals are stronger, because there's more heat in the atmosphere. So a hailstone has to be bigger before it becomes heavy enough to fall out, because the thermals are stronger. They certainly don't want to know about mega cryometeorites, which are hailstones the size of watermelons, which are starting to appear over the heat islands in Europe and North America. To the sort of person who's planning on living in an electrified coal-powered city for another 20 or 30 years before they can afford to retire, which to them means selling their little brick tiled roofed shithouse on a quarter of an acre in the city for enough money that they can afford to go on a world holiday, buy a house of equivalent size on a block of land twice that size in a country town and become a tree changer, or a giant Winnebago and become a grey nomad and drive around and around National Highway number 1 and circumnavigate the country until they're so old they've got to go into a geriatrics home, a holding paddock before they hit the cemetery. Under the skin principle, spend the kids' inheritance now. You talk to somebody who aspires to being a grey nomad in 20 years' time, but they know they have to keep their little nose at the grindstone. They don't want to hear about global warming. They don't want to hear about anything that's going to make it more expensive to burn carbon. Their idea of efficiency is to make it less expensive to burn carbon. They want to have more sparkly lights, more advertising, more air conditioners. If you get a hot day, obviously turn the air conditioner up. That's their theory. They don't understand that psychosis means to be out of touch with reality, and an air conditioner or a refrigerator means lighting a fire to make something else go cold. Right? They are technically, literally, psychotic by the definition of the word psychosis. But they are statistically normal because there's a fucking lot more of them than there is people like me. Somebody like me who's been frightened of global warming since the 1980s, somebody who's gone a little bit out of my way to try and reduce my carbon footprint. I got it down to 9.7 tonnes per year, and I found by putting a solar panel on my car I could shave 760 kilograms of carbon dioxide emission per year off my footprint. So your average person living in the suburbs, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that they're wasting at least 10%, probably more like 20%, and in a lot of cases 30% of their car's fuel burn in failing to ever finish recharging their battery because of their short run times, because there's so many little short runs around town, commuting. No, they like to think that their expensive new fire chariot, with its insurance paid up, is marvellously efficient. That's why they bought it. That's why they traded in their old clunker. They don't want to be told. They don't want to be told that if they put a solar panel on their old heap of shit, it would get better fuel economy than their new one does. They want the economy to keep on growing, and it ain't going to do it. And they honestly believe that if they can get together politically and agree to shut their eyes and look away from the evidence of the atmospheric chemistry and the climate science, they think if they can look away and pay attention to something else, it'll be a simple case of no data, no problem. You know, like, why would you go and measure the lead levels of the children in the schools in the town where there's a lead mine or a lead smelter? If you know what the lead levels are in the children, you might have to take expensive action to remediate it by cleaning up the fucking mine or the smelter. If you don't know that if you don't know what the lead levels are, then there's no problem. Well, same with global warming. The denialists are doing whatever they can to claim that it's a scam by scientists in order to get research money to basically play shell games in a laboratory. The denialists have reflex, thoughtless self-interest at heart, short-term self-interest. They don't understand that global warming is child abuse. If I try and see how rich I can get, if I try and see how fast I can consume, then I might as well go and take a baseball bat to my firstborn grandchild, as yet unconceived as far as I know. I may as well take a baseball bat and club the poor little kid's head in, as continue to fart carbon dioxide because life's good. And the economy has to grow. And we live in a democracy. And it's a free world. And onward and upward. And progress. You can't stop progress. Well, I'm sorry, but we've hit the growth limit. We can't grow the economy anymore. It's going to collapse and implode. And the people who argue that there's no such thing as global warming, or it's not being caused by people, they're off the planet. They really are. They suffer from what in medical terminology is called fifth syndrome. F-I-T-H syndrome. Fucked in the head syndrome. We've already achieved 0.8 of a degree of warming and 5% extra humidity. Latest IPCC report says by 2070 we've got a 90% chance of 4 degrees of warming and a 10% chance of 9 degrees by 2100. If we achieve 9 degrees of global warming by 2100, it's essentially game over for any humans who are not living as cave dwellers in the freshly melted Antarctic. I'm not joking. The only way we can keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius, which is what we were told 5 years ago was fairly catastrophic, is if by 2020, within 8 years, we reduce all industrial economic burning of coal, oil and gas to zero by 2020. So we're going to have a pretty interesting solar flare incident to shut down the power grid. Or perhaps the Israelis will drop an atom bomb on Iran for wanting to have an atomic power station. Or perhaps we'll have bird flu, pig flu and chikungunya crossbreeding and spread around the world by airliners. But there is no gentle transition from where humanity is now to where humanity has to be in 8 years' time if we are not to catastrophically change the biosphere. Like I said, I'm the fool on the hill. And I drink some of the most politically incorrect beer in the world. This is a malt liquor video. West Australian hops, air freighted to California, shipped to West Australia, and then trained back to Melbourne and trucked to Brisbane and back down to Glen Innes. This has travelled far enough to have gone around the world. So, not everybody's perfect. But the reason the global warming denialists cannot admit what global warming is doing is psychological and self-interest driven. Smooth. I guess It's a case of they will learn. It's getting beyond and past what Jesus said when he was hanging on the cross, forgive them, they know not what they do. It's a case of they know what they're doing and they don't give a shit because they're doing it anyway. So let the chips fall where they lay, and we have free will. We wear the consequences of our actions. Here I am living in a wet spot too green to burn. 90% of New South Wales is having catastrophic fire conditions today. And there are people who tell me I am a fucking idiot for paying attention to learning how to rain dance. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. That should be a good malt liquor video. Ciao.